Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Peter and this is Tech Suvara. Today we're going to talk about native and hybrid development, the technologies. We're going to do it in two parts. Today's video is going to be the first part, which is more from a client's perspective. And the second one, which will be done in a couple of weeks, will be from a developer's perspective. So join me as we discuss the pros and cons and when you should and when you shouldn't use either native or hybrid software development tech stacks for your mobile or a tablet app. Let's do it. The very first question that I usually get asked by clients and brands is, what is the difference between native development and hybrid development and the tech stacks? So it's quite simple. Native development basically centers on the technology and the tools and the languages that are focused on a particular ecosystem that is on a specific platform. So you have iOS, which works on your iPhone, you have iPadOS, which works on your iPad, macOS. They all use the same tool set, they all use the same languages. So this is Swift, Objective-C, and the standard cross-platform lower level languages that we have, which are C, C++, and all that. They build a application that only runs on those systems. So for instance, if I wanted to build an iOS app using the native tools, I couldn't build an Android app using the same tools. So the same thing goes for Android. If I wanted to build a Android app, I would need to use Kotlin, Android Studio, the ecosystem and the tooling around that. Now, the team behind Kotlin are working on using the same language to build apps on iOS, but again, it would need to work. You'd still need to use the tooling and the underlying systems to build an app. So again, it is then a cross-platform. If you wanted to build a Android app, you would use Android Studio primarily, you would use the Kotlin language or Java language, and you would use the systems and the philosophy when developing Android apps for that platform. So, and hybrid development is when you use a technology system that sits on top of both and just splits out into two. So the philosophy is that you should be able to build it once, write the code once, and then the tooling will build you an application both for Android and iOS. So the philosophy is one thing, but the practical approach is another thing. So this is where we get to the second question. So the second question is what is the most popular hybrid solution? What are the hybrid solutions, and what are the differences between them? So it's really a number of questions in one. So to answer that, primarily the main cross-platform mobile app development solutions that run on the app that are popular are React Native, Flutter, and Xamarin. There are other ones, but I won't talk about them today. So React Native is built by Facebook. It is based on the same ideas that are for React. Flutter is a Google product that it runs in the Dart language, and Xamarin is a Microsoft product that runs in C#. So React Native focuses pretty much from kind of like a web developer's perspective in how you build and interact with the application. A Flutter developed app focuses more on the type of approach that you would see in software development on in the traditional way where you would build a software application. And Xamarin is a Microsoft product, again, more traditional approach to software application development, and it is generally focused on enterprise applications. I don't know many people that have used Xamarin apps, have built Xamarin apps to great effect. We won't talk about that too much. Xamarin is mostly focused on people that, in the C# sphere. If you've got a lot of people that are already developing C# and you want to build an application that is maybe in-house, or you want to build an application for a client and you don't have the time to upskill with the language to other languages, then Xamarin might be a good choice. So the The most popular, generally speaking, is React Native, though Flutter is making really big strides. There is a lot of promotion of it. It is used as a teaching tool in universities at the moment to teach mobile app development. So it is very popular. It is, I would say, almost on par with React Native in terms of community support. So really, React Native and Flutter are the ones that are primarily competing for the top spot. So my preference personally, anecdotally, is towards Flutter, and I'll explain why. So next question. The next question I generally get asked is, what are the limitations when developing hybrid apps? And generally speaking, when you develop a hybrid application, you're limited in a number of ways. One is the technology that you're using is always a little step behind what the native the companies that produce the native software tools are up to. So a lot of the UI components, a lot of the tooling may be a bit behind what the latest version of the tooling is. The other limitation is the ability to interact. This is mostly for iOS, is the ability to interact with custom operating system functionality that is new or is closed specifically by the platform to prevent you from doing things that are cross-platform. Now, this goes into an interesting situation. So what I have found is that Apple in particular is making it difficult to do hybrid mobile development because they want their ecosystem closed. So I think in one way it is a good thing. In another way, it kind of prevents being able to quickly and easily build cross-platform apps. So being able to build Apple Watch apps is really difficult, if not impossible, using hybrid technologies, because the technology difference, there is no equivalent of an Apple Watch in the Android sphere. You do have the Android smartwatches, but they're not. There's no way to really create a system that builds binaries for both. So then you have to kind of build specific things for both, and you end up building like just a little shell that runs on the cross-platform systems. And so at the end of the day, when you want to build something specific that goes deeper than just doing a simple application, whether it's a UI application, and you want to use things like Bluetooth, you want to use things like app clips that are specific to that platform, for whether for iOS or Android, you're going to be limited by hybrid technologies. So that is primarily the main limitation. Is if you want to do anything really more interesting than a simple application that interacts with an API or a cloud service, then you're going to have problems. So on to the next question. The next question is whether a user will see the difference in an app and whether they can tell whether it's cross-platform or not. From a client perspective, they want to be sure that they're not going to have performance issues, or the UI is going to be pretty much standard. And for most simple applications that do simple things, you're not going to notice unless you're really looking and you know what you're looking for, which is probably 1%, if not less, of people that use mobile applications. So generally speaking, I would say that you don't notice it. If you have an application that's complex and you have a lot of features that require performance optimization, then the actual performance of the app generally will be slower for cross-platform than it is for an optimized application. So if you wanted to have a good example is a video game, you can tell when an app is built on native hardware acceleration and when it's built with something like Unity, because the tools don't use the optimal path that you could take if you used something very specific for that platform. In iOS, it's something called metal rendering. You do the similar thing, I think, with, not sure exactly on Android what it is, but there are specific hard ways to access more optimal functionality when you want to build things that really need to run fast. So it's more so on iOS. So in general, the user won't notice, again, it really depends what you want to build as a client. If you want to build something that really needs high performance video game that does a lot of special effects, is complex, then you will notice it as a performance degradation in terms of UI. The more complicated your app is, and the more UI and the more things it does in terms of animation, then you will notice the difference, because the more complex things are, the more difficult it is to do them cross-platform. So on to the next question. Generally, the clients and people that when you build apps will ask you, what does the development process look like? And in terms of an internal development process for whether it's cross-platform or hybrid, there generally really isn't a difference other than the tools you use. There are greater complexities in using cross-platform because there's more tools. Not only do you have to know the cross-platform systems, right? So not only do you have to know Android and iOS, but you also need to know this third kind of like thing that sits on top of both of the platforms. So you'd have, like, say for instance, your Flutter tooling, then you'd have your iOS tooling that you need to build your iOS for, and then you have your Android tooling you build your Android app for. As much as possible, these things are automated, but it doesn't always work that way. And the support forums are filled, they're filled with just endless streams of people having all kinds of problems trying to build for their applications cross-platform. And that happens all the time. And every time something new comes out on either platform, then you'll likely find people that are complaining that what this cross-platform tool is doing is not working with this new feature, or it's broken. And so that kind of leads us to the next question is, making the choice. The last question is like whether they should or shouldn't use cross-platform development. Now, the benefits are that the fundamental benefit of getting your app out really quickly is really the only main reason, from experience, I would ever build an app cross-platform, for instance in Flutter or React Native. If you really want to quickly get something out, if you need to validate something in the marketplace and you don't have much time, you don't have much budget, and it's your application is not complicated, and you don't really care too much about the performance or styling of it, then go cross-platform to get your product to try it out in the marketplace and get it. And if you have something really simple in terms of functionality, like a simple front-facing app that doesn't do too much, and you don't really care too much about supporting it consistently across like a certain period, and that's also another reason to get an application out. For building a native app, if you want to focus on a community and you want to focus on building an application that is going to, stand the test of time, then you want to focus on native. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because from experience of myself and others, cross-platform applications very often might not cost much to get out the door the first time, but you come back to them in 6 months and there are a lot of things broken every time. Without fail, things are broken in the ecosystem. If you want to do an update, something new has happened, something has changed, you run into a lot of problems with dependencies falling behind, which means that other libraries that you've relied on for your UI or for other functionality ends up being quite difficult to fix. Even just simply getting your dependencies right, for me in terms of React Native, has always been a problem. Not so much as bad as Flutter is better, but React Native is really painful. And from the 5 years that I've been working on native and cross-platform, things are fixed quicker. It's easier to get things done for a particular platform than it is for both. And sometimes you can get stuck on issues which are unfixable, and you have to wait until the issue is fixed by someone else. So that's another problem. It happens on native development, but on hybrid it happens more often, and it is a longer wait. So generally, overall, I would recommend that if people really care about the product that they want to release, that they focus on a native development. Hybrid is a great way to get something out the door. It makes sense from a certain cost approach that you feel like you might reduce the cost of development to get a product out. But in terms of supporting it in the long term, it's better to build a native application. And I think a lot of other people have experienced the same thing, and there's a general consensus that if you have the budget and you have the resources, then you will go for native, because it will be a better experience, it will be smoother, it will be easier to support. But not everybody has that luxury, and it is understandable when people might go for React Native to get something out for themselves, get something out for their brand, and get some interaction with their customers. So that's it, guys. That's the first part, which is talking about, from a client's perspective, the questions that are asked. And the next part, which will come out in a couple of weeks, will focus more on the development side of things and what, as a developer, you might want to know and what you want to focus on. And we'll talk about that then. Thanks for listening, guys. If you're interested in more videos, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.